On a quiet suburban morning, a mother sorting laundry stumbled upon a hidden backpack stuffed with belongings that did not belong to her daughter, objects that tied directly to a missing teenager and a crime the entire town was desperately trying to understand. In that moment, the peaceful life she thought she knew began to unravel, revealing a trail of secrets that pointed back to her own home and raised a terrifying question no parent ever expects to face. Lena Pierce had always believed she understood her daughter better than anyone else. Marin was quiet, reserved, and often lost in her own thoughts, but she was gentle and predictable. Their home sat on a peaceful street where the loudest sounds were dogs barking or lawnmowers running on weekends. Nothing ever seemed out of order. That was why the sudden change in Marin felt so strange, so out of place, and so deeply unsettling. The shift began on a cold Friday night. Marin had gone out earlier in the evening, saying she was going for a short walk before dinner. Lena didn't think much of it. Marin often wandered through the neighborhood to clear her mind. But hours passed, and Lena's worrying grew stronger with each minute. She checked the front window again and again, expecting to see her daughter stroll back under the streetlights. Instead, the sidewalk remained empty. When Marin finally returned home well past midnight, Lena felt the air drain from her lungs. Marin's appearance was nothing like her usual neat self. Her clothes were dusty. Her shoes were covered in dried mud. Twigs clung to her hair as if she had been crawling along the ground. She moved silently through the doorway, not even glancing at her mother. There was no explanation, no sign of exhaustion, no sign of fear, just a strange, distant calm. Lena watched her disappear down the hallway. Every instinct begged her to ask questions, but something in Marin's expression made her hesitate. It wasn't anger or sadness, it was emptiness, as though her daughter had left her own body behind somewhere in the dark. The next morning, Lena hoped the strange behavior would fade, but Marin barely left her room. She ignored breakfast and kept her door closed for hours. When she did come out, she only drifted from one part of the house to another, avoiding eye contact. She moved quietly, almost too quietly, as if she were trying not to disturb a fragile balance. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with activity. Police cars rolled slowly down the street, their lights flashing in the pale morning sun. Officers knocked on doors, and worried parents gathered on their porches. Word spread quickly. A teenager from a few streets away had vanished during the night. No one had seen him since he left home to meet a friend. His phone had been found abandoned near a set of woods, screen cracked and battery dead. Lena felt a cold pressure in her chest as she watched the officers walk from house to house. Something about the timing twisted her thoughts in a way she didn't want to acknowledge. Marin had come home long after the teen had disappeared. She had returned dirty, shaken, and strangely numb. The image kept replaying in Lena's mind, each time bringing a deeper sense of dread. She tried to convince herself that Marin would never be connected to something so serious. Yet the memory of her daughter's silent, unfocused stare lingered like a shadow that refused to disappear. Lena sensed that something terrible had happened, something she wasn't ready to understand, and the fear of that unknown truth settled heavily over her home. Lena spent the rest of the day trying to distract herself with chores, but her mind refused to settle. Every sound from Marin's room made her flinch. The house, usually a place of comfort, felt tense and unfamiliar. She moved through each room with a growing sense of unease, noticing details she normally wouldn't. A faint earthy smell near the back door, scuff marks on the tiles, and a small smear of dirt on the stair railing. None of it was alarming on its own, yet together it formed a pattern she couldn't ignore. By mid-afternoon, Lena decided to tackle the laundry. Sorting clothes always relaxed her, but today it only made her more anxious. Marin's laundry basket was nearly empty, even though she had worn different clothes the night before. That struck Lena as strange. Her daughter was usually careless about where she tossed her things. Curious and uneasy, Lena began looking around the laundry room more carefully. That was when she noticed something out of place, a backpack shoved far behind the dryer, so deep it nearly touched the wall. She pulled it out, feeling the unusual weight immediately. It wasn't Marin's school bag. This one was older, scuffed, and unfamiliar. Her hands trembled as she unzipped it, half expecting to find nothing more than forgotten belongings. But what she uncovered made her breath catch. Inside were clothes she didn't recognize, rumpled and covered in dirt and leaves. Some pieces were torn, as if they had been snagged on branches. None of them belonged to her daughter. Beneath the pile of clothing lay a small notebook. The cover was cracked, and the pages were filled with handwriting that didn't match Marin's. Lena flipped through it with stiff fingers. It appeared to be a personal journal, full of everyday notes and reminders, ordinary thoughts from an ordinary teenager. But the name written inside the front cover belonged to the missing boy the entire neighborhood was searching for. Lena felt her pulse spike. She placed the notebook aside and reached deeper into the bag. Her hand brushed against something cold and metallic. When she pulled it out, she saw it was a tool from the shed, the kind her husband used to use before he passed away. She rarely touched the tools now, and Marin certainly had no reason to. Yet here it was, coated in a thick layer of dried earth and tangled with several dark strands she couldn't identify. The sight of it made her pull her hand back instantly, as though the object had burned her. She stepped away from the backpack, unable to breathe for a moment. Her thoughts collided in a frantic rush. How had Marin gotten these things? Why were they hidden? What did this all mean? The police were searching for a missing teenager, and pieces of his belongings were inside her home. Lena closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. Every instinct told her to confront Marin immediately, but she couldn't bring herself to move. The weight of the discovery pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. Fear curled tightly around her heart. She felt, for the first time, that something far more disturbing than she had imagined was unfolding beneath her own roof. News of the body spread quickly through the quiet town, turning ordinary conversations into nervous whispers. People who once greeted each other warmly now looked over their shoulders, locking doors earlier than usual. The discovery had shaken everyone, and the details released by investigators were enough to unsettle even those who normally dismissed rumors. A partially buried body had been found near the hiking trail on the outskirts of the neighborhood. The area was popular with families during summer, but now it stood surrounded by yellow tape and guarded by officers who kept the curious at a distance. Lena listened to the updates with increasing dread. Each report felt like a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve, yet she couldn't stop herself from connecting the clues. The police mentioned that the scene appeared carefully arranged, as if someone had tried to hide the body with broken branches and scattered leaves. The level of intention involved suggested a disturbing sense of control. What terrified Lena most was how closely the description matched the dirt and debris she had found inside the backpack. The woods had always been a place Marin liked to explore. As a child, she spent hours wandering through the trees, collecting rocks and building small forts from fallen branches. But she hadn't gone there in years. At least, Lena had assumed she hadn't. Now she questioned every assumption she had ever made about her daughter's habits and routines. She wondered if the woods had quietly welcomed her daughter back long before the police had arrived. The presence of patrol cars near the trail became a constant reminder of what had happened. Each time Lena drove past the area or glimpsed the flashing lights from a distance, her heart pounded violently. She couldn't shake the image of the officers combing through the undergrowth with focused determination. They were looking for answers. She feared they would eventually find something that pointed directly to her own home. Inside the house, Marin remained withdrawn. She spent most of her time staring out her bedroom window, her eyes fixed on the tree line behind the backyard. She seemed to be waiting for something, though Lena couldn't imagine what. Her movements were slower now, almost mechanical, as though she were disconnected from her surroundings. She barely reacted to anything, not even the rising tension filling the neighborhood. Lena began watching her daughter in the same way the community watched the woods, with wary curiosity and growing fear. She noticed small things she had never paid attention to before, like the dirt under Marin's fingernails or the faint scratches on her arms that she didn't try to cover. None of it was alarming by itself, but together it painted a picture she didn't want to look at too closely. As the investigation continued, the officers expanded their search. They asked residents to report anything unusual, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Lena wanted to speak up, to confess what she had found in the laundry room, yet she couldn't bring herself to do it. She felt stuck between two unbearable possibilities, the chance that her daughter was involved and the fear that she might be wrong, placing blame where it didn't belong. But every new police announcement made the situation feel more certain. The details they shared matched the evidence hidden in her own home far too closely to be ignored. Each passing day tightened the knot of dread in her stomach, making it harder to breathe. The woods had revealed their secret, and Lena suspected the worst part had yet to come. The announcement about the footprints sent a chill through the entire neighborhood, but none felt it as sharply as Lena. The officers explained that the impressions left in the soil near the scene came from a small pair of shoes, likely belonging to someone young. When the shoe size was revealed, Lena's heart tightened painfully. It matched Marin's exactly. The information echoed in her mind long after the broadcast ended, settling into her thoughts like a heavy stone she couldn't move. She tried to convince herself it was a coincidence, but the evidence she had already stumbled upon made that impossible. Each detail lined up too neatly, too precisely. The unfamiliar clothes, the dirt-covered tool, the missing boy's notebook combined with the footprints, they formed a picture she could no longer deny. The fear she had felt before deepened into something sharper and far more overwhelming. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the beginning of certainty. Lena returned to Marin's room early one morning, unable to stop herself. She searched slowly, carefully, as though part of her hoped she would find nothing. Yet every drawer she opened only fueled her dread. There were more signs of secret activity: muddy socks shoved behind books, a jacket with pine needles stuck in the lining, and scraps of paper with smudges she couldn't identify. Each discovery made her chest tighten further. Then she noticed something odd under the bed, wedged between storage boxes. It was another backpack, smaller and newer than the one she had found earlier. For a long moment she hesitated. Part of her wanted to leave it there and pretend she had never seen it. But she couldn't allow herself to look away. With trembling hands, she pulled it out. Inside was a sealed plastic container wrapped in layers of cloth. The bundle was heavy, unnaturally so. Even without unwrapping it, she sensed what it contained. Her instincts screamed at her, urging her to put it down. A cold wave spread through her body as she understood the full weight of her discovery. This was the missing piece investigators were searching for. It was the object that confirmed her greatest fear. She backed away from the bed, struggling to breathe. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to quiet the rising panic. The reality she had been trying to avoid now stood overwhelmingly clear. Her daughter wasn't just connected to the incident, she was at the center of it. And the evidence had been lying beneath her roof the entire time. Yet something about the situation didn't feel complete. Marin's behavior, distant and dazed, didn't match someone who had acted alone. The precision of the scene described by police seemed calculated for a teenager who could barely maintain eye contact. Lena sensed another presence in the shadows of the story, someone who had influenced or encouraged her daughter's actions. Questions flooded her mind, racing faster than she could contain them. How long had this been happening? Who had been near Marin without her noticing? Why had her daughter returned home in such a strange, disconnected state? Lena realized she had to prepare herself for the possibility that an even darker truth waited beyond the evidence she had already uncovered. Police presence intensified before Lena could decide on her next step. Early one morning, she heard firm knocks echoing through the house, followed by the low voices of officers requesting entry. They carried a warrant, their expressions grim and focused. It was clear they were no longer conducting routine interviews. They had narrowed their search, and they had come directly for answers hidden within her home. Lena stepped aside, her hands trembling, unable to speak. It felt as though the house itself exhaled a long-held secret the moment the officers walked in. They moved with practiced efficiency, heading first to the backyard and then to Marin's room. Lena watched helplessly as they combed through the space she had explored only days before. The officers uncovered the evidence she had feared they would find: the containers, the backpack, the clothing that didn't belong to her daughter. Their quiet murmurs and solemn expressions confirmed everything she had dreaded. Lena felt her knees weaken as the weight of it all pressed down on her. Marin's reaction, however, was something Lena could never have predicted. When the officers approached her, she did not fight, cry, or plead. She simply stood still, her posture strangely relaxed, her face drained of emotion. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, knowing it was coming, accepting it as an inevitable part of a plan she no longer controlled. She did not look at her mother, not even once, as she was escorted out the front door and into the waiting police car. The community reacted with shock when news spread that Marin Pierce, a quiet girl from a quiet home, had become the primary suspect. Parents whispered among themselves, trying to understand how something so disturbing could unfold within familiar streets. But the investigation didn't end with Marin's arrest. Authorities soon uncovered additional clues near the crime scene, details that shifted the narrative in an unexpected direction. A second set of footprints had been discovered, larger than Marin's and following her tracks closely. They paused where she paused, circled where she circled, and vanished only a short distance from the trail. There were signs that someone else had been present, someone who moved with purpose and confidence. Investigators also found subtle disturbances in the surrounding brush that indicated another person had guided Marin's movements, staying just out of sight. Evidence from the recovered belongings added to this new theory. Some items didn't match Marin's capabilities or knowledge. The arrangement of the scene showed a level of precision difficult for a teenager to achieve alone. A pattern began to form, suggesting Marin had not acted independently but had been influenced, manipulated, or possibly coerced by an unknown individual. Despite intense efforts, this person was never identified. No fingerprints, recordings, or direct witnesses surfaced. Whoever it was had been careful enough to avoid leaving clear traces. The figure remained a ghost in the investigation, a presence only visible through subtle clues left behind. Lena lived with this uncertainty long after the case quieted. The idea that someone else had moved in the shadows beside her daughter was more terrifying than anything she had imagined. It left her with a chilling realization: while her daughter was now in custody, the unseen influence that had guided her actions was still out there, somewhere beyond reach, watching and waiting for reasons no one could understand.